Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. Spencer and Jamie here on a rare, live, in-person episode.
Together.
Our 200th episode, Jamie, came and went, and we did nothing to celebrate it, which is kind of not like us. Usually we kind of like marking our milestones and celebrating our wins, and I think 200 podcast episodes is a pretty good win.
It's been a little bit of a crazy season, so we'll give ourselves some grace on that. But I think it is important for us to look back and think about all that we've been able to discuss and the number of people that we've been able to help over the last 4 years. Maybe like another quick rehack of our origin story of how the podcast came to be. Maybe a little bit too about what we want to do next and where we're going and how we can help you guys if you have other questions or topics. Because we feel like we've covered a lot, and sometimes we repeat ourselves and the same kind of things of, don't spend too much money and invest in your TSP and take advantage of credit card benefits. But we know there's a lot of people that are still unreached and need help with their finances, and people are still feeling stressed about money. So we still have the opportunity to help other people. So we're gonna look back and look forward a little bit today.
I think that's like the big thing for me is like, I'd be very happy if we could stop podcasting, but not that I don't love doing this project with you, but it would be great if every military service member had it figured out, right?
Yeah.
Like if the meme of the 28% Dodge Charger loan wasn't a thing anymore, right? Like if that's completely abolished, then I'd be like, great, we don't need a podcast anymore. Yeah. But people still don't understand what a good deal the TSP is. People still don't understand what a bad deal high interest debt is, credit card debt, student loans. Yeah. Student loans aren't bad, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. But if you take out too many of them, especially for major that's not going to pay you very well, there's still a lot to do. There's still a lot to be done. And especially with the current situation with the government shutdown, you'd be shocked at how many people don't have an emergency fund. And we're always harping on that. Like, you've got to have an emergency fund. And a lot of times people think, well, I'm in the military. Why do I need an emergency fund? And it's like, well, this is the prime example, a government shutdown.
Yeah. So before we go back to the origin story, Spencer, what do you think? I'll be curious, maybe the listeners can send us a DM on Instagram or an email at Military Money Manual on Instagram or podcast at militarymoneymanual.com for the email. What do you think is like the most common, like what do we hit all the time, or the most common topic or the most frequented thing in our outlines?
I mean, the TSP comes up all the time. Emergency funds, I think emergency funds actually come up quite a bit. Debt repayment, credit cards. We talk about credit cards quite a bit on the program. I mean, but we're usually talking about them from like an angle that you almost don't see anybody, especially in the mainstream kind of personal finance community, talk about, because we're talking about them as military service members where we don't have to pay the annual fees and military spouses don't have to pay the annual fees. And so we're just like, hey, open as many cards as you can as long as you're not building up credit card debt. And I think that's that's something that I didn't understand when I first joined the military. I was afraid like the first, like a gateway drug, right? Like the second you smoke weed, the next day you're gonna be doing crack cocaine and heroin in the streets. And it's like, the second you open up a credit card, you're gonna have $100,000 of credit card debt. And that's just not true. Like, you have to make a lot of mistakes along the way to build up credit card debt. And if you're in the military and you're not paying the annual fees, like, why would you not get these cards and reap the benefits? It's the greatest military discount available.
I think what we hit a lot of is the service member and the spouse can have their own card. I would also say like Roth IRA does not equal Roth TSP, but I don't know that that's been as common, though when it does come up, we try to be emphatic about it. But I'm sure there's things out there that the OG listeners feel are a little bit broken record about, but it's all good. And like you said, there's still so many people that need to be reached, because there's still people asking about only being able to contribute like $7,000 to their Roth TSP because they see the word Roth. We still have more work to do.
Yeah, still have more work to do. I think it'd be cool to just tell the origin story again, because we do have a lot more listeners now than when we first got started. It was actually on another trip very similar to this one where we took some time to go. It was just towards the tail end of COVID and things were starting to open back up, and we went over to the Four Seasons Lanai in Hawaii, because we were stationed in Hawaii at the time. They had a great deal going.
It was like half price.
It was like half price. It was so good.
It was great.
And we were walking around talking about money like we always do. And
You forgot to say we took a vacation with our spouses. It wasn't.
That's true. It wasn't just us.
Just a romantic couples getaway with just us. We each had our wife there.
We each had our wife there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we were just walking and talking as we normally do, and your wife was like, "You guys should start a podcast." And
it was more of like, "You won't shut up about this. Why don't you start?
Why don't you start a podcast?"
And she's not wrong, and it was a great idea.
It was a great idea.
So then we published our first episode in May of 2021.
Crazy.
We recorded from my living room.
I remember that. Yeah.
With
you guys were getting ready
dinner tray.
You guys were getting ready to PCS, so you had like no stuff in your house.
Yeah.
And I think your kids were like running around too.
They were.
Like they were good. They were being quiet.
But they
were just like they were running around like in our space. Episode 1 was pretty bad. I mean, I haven't been able to go back and listen to it in its entirety. Like, we were so nervous.
I went back to episode 2 and I was like, okay, it wasn't as bad as I remember.
Episode 2 was pretty good, actually.
I think that, I think it was a good start. And since then, you know, we've published over 200 episodes now. We've had almost 400,000 downloads. We're getting literally tens of thousands of people and military families that we're helping with every episode. And I think it's really, really neat. Because at one time we were talking about, you know, if you had the opportunity to talk to 50 service members in an auditorium each week, would you do that?
Yeah.
And we're able to reach way more than that each week, with yet a large number still unreached.
Yeah, well over 10,000.
You know, if we did have to switch to like a monthly rhythm, it'd be okay, but it is good.
Yeah, a monthly rhythm for episode release it would not be bad. You know, we have such a good back catalog too. Episode 2 is still our most popular episode.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Which is pretty crazy. So that's the Thrift Savings Plan 1, which I have gone back and listened to, and like it still holds up. And I don't know if it's just because like we were in my office at the time and like opening up.
I think it was the first one we cracked a beer for, like in the recording. So it was just super relatable.
It was
two bros hanging out talking about money,
talking about the TSP.
Two finance bros. But you know, the ones that are big it's always TSP, it's the VA loans, it's Amex Platinum. Those are the ones that perform way more than the other ones.
In terms of downloads.
Downloads, yeah.
But it's interesting. I think we get the most personal feedback on the ones where it's like people sharing stories and people talking about how they achieve financial independence.
So more engagement, maybe?
Yeah, we had Carol Pittner on. That was episode number 184. So that was our dual military millionaires, financial independence in 4 years. And they had a lot of things that they shared. I mean, being a dual military couple in the American military is such a hack. It's tough. And like you lived that life for a while. A lot of our friends live that life. And especially like if you're in busy career field, like you're both pilots or you got a pilot and a doctor or someone in that situation, like those are not easy years. But they can be very lucrative years. And they don't have to last forever. You know, you can kind of sprint like they did and get to that coast fire or lean fire mark like really quickly. And then it just opens up, even if you have no idea what the word fire is, just having hundreds of thousands of dollars at your disposal just gives you so many options. It gives you so much freedom.
Or even a couple $1,000s to help you get through an emergency. We've covered so many different topics as well and even sometimes we get people that are, I'm PCSing across the country and I just went through and listened to all 200 episodes and we're like, wow, that is aggressive. I'm sorry for that. But it is also neat when we get to run into people who've been listeners or fans for years, and we hear people's success stories of how they got out of a bad financial advisor situation or they started investing for the very first time. And I think those are the things that feedback from people who take the things that we talk about and put it into practice and then help take care of their family better because of some of the things that we talk about is what makes it incredibly rewarding and the time that we put into it worth it, because that's what it's all about, is helping people understand that money is a tool that can bring you freedom. It can give you options. There's a lot of benefits out there for you, and you have to kind of take ownership of your situation. You're not always just a victim of the situation, of the world, of the political climate or whatever. Like you own your future and you can take control of it and do better than what your parents did for you or than what your grandparents had. You're in control of it. And I think that's one of the things that we try to talk about very, very often, of giving yourself ideas and tools to discover that you have choices. You don't have to stay in the military forever. You don't have to only do 4 years. You don't only have to do active duty. You can do Guard or Reserve. There's a million different ways to slice it, but you're in control of your future.
That's one of the most important messages that we try to get out on the podcast is take some ownership. Like you are literally the captain of your fate. I mean, when we started this, like we were not good at this stuff. Like we had debt. I had a lot of student loan debt. My wife had student loan debt. Your wife had credit card debt, car loans. I mean, like, Dave Ramsey, great place to start. I think you can graduate very quickly from Dave's methods, but I'm a believer in his methods. They worked for me. They work for millions of people. It's like anything. Like if you don't practice and you don't try, yeah, you're always going to be bad at it. But if you just take some initiatives, there's probably, I don't know, we've done a couple of those podcast episodes, like if I only could talk to you for an hour. There's one for military officers, one for military enlisted. Just go listen to that one episode. And in an hour, it could probably literally change the entire trajectory of your life. I mean, you could go from just a cycle of generational poverty to start building generational wealth and change the entire trajectory of your family in the present day and your descendants for many generations to come.
Yeah. Another thing I think that we've helped advance, and we're not there yet, and we still have more to reach, but helping people talk about money. And it's always easy to say, hey bro, do you get the Amex Platinum? Like use my referral link or whatever. But to be like, instead as supervisors, hey, are you investing in your TSP? Do you understand your options? And so we love hearing from whether it's instructors or ROTC cadre or just generic supervisors in all of the branches, which I feel like weirdly we get a lot of supervisors from the Navy that talk about that. There must be some really good supervisors in the Navy that are just like, hey, I talk about it with everyone. And it's just giving them resources, helping them understand their options. And no one's telling you, hey, you need to do 15% into this fund. It's just, hey, do you understand your options? Right. And if you don't, here are some resources to help you understand what you're doing without having to pay for some expensive financial advisor to help you manage your TSP, because there's programs out there that'll charge you for that. There's apps that'll tell you how to do your TSP, or people that you can pay, and it's just a waste of money in a lot of cases. But I think it's really good when people are talking to each other, talking to their friends, and not just the current like hot stock tip, but long-term financial success, which might involve stocks, but just helping people become informed in what their choices are.
The military does have a very unique culture of investing and its relationship with money, where there is that whole concept of like the senior enlisted member or the more senior officer sitting down with their troops, going through their LES, talking to them about their financial situation. Like that whole concept of like financial readiness, that's not something you find anywhere else in the world. In the civilian sector, like you are on your own. They won't even tell you, they'll tell you that you have a 401k benefit. It's like pulling teeth sometimes to figure out like, how do I even like contribute to this thing? And like, what are my options inside of there? Yeah. Whereas in the military, like if you have a good supervisor, hopefully they sat you down at some point and said, look, you have a thrift savings plan, you have an automatic 5% going into it, and it's automatically invested in a life cycle fund appropriate to your age. Any questions? And like, hopefully you had some questions and hopefully they had some good answers, or at least knew where to point you. And I mean, you can start with like episode number 2 of our podcast if you want to learn more about the thrift savings plan and all the different funds available in there. But I think that kind of culture of mentorship and of especially, NCOs and officers trying to help the people that they supervise or the people that they lead to not make the same mistakes that they did. I think that's a big thing that we have in the military, of like lessons learned and trying to just not repeat the same mistakes of our predecessors.
And there's a lot of training built in that the Department of Defense gives us through the Office of Financial Readiness. And that's really one of the things it all comes down to, is financial readiness for you and your family, so that when it's time to do the mission, you're prepared for it and you're not distracted. There's a quote from the Secretary of the Air Force, maybe in like 2021 or 23 timeframe, about how can I expect the airmen to do the mission if they're distracted about how they're going to get gas today on the way to work. Yeah. And I think that kind of mindset is important for leaders and supervisors to remember, because there are people, and they're probably not talking to you if you're not aware of it, but there are people in your team, in your platoon, company, unit, squadron, battalion, like whatever, that are concerned and stressed about money. And financial readiness is going to impact your mission if you don't get out ahead of it and share resources with people and empower people and set the climate where they're okay talking about stuff. And that's one of the things I love about podcasts in general, not just ours, because let's say that like Spencer and I are having trouble in our friendship communicating. I could like find a podcast and be like, hey, you should listen to this podcast. And the podcast could be about like how you should be a better communicator. Like, I don't know. Like couples can use that technique. Friends can use that technique. You can post it on your Facebook or on your LinkedIn of like, hey, this episode was really powerful for me and you hope your mother-in-law sees it. Like, I don't know, but there's something about finding an audio content like a podcast where it's easy to share with your friends, and then you can build up that community of like-minded people who are all trying to learn how to invest or advance their investments so that they're taking care of themselves and their family by being intentional with their money instead of just letting life happen to them. It's another tool. We hope that you're finding other people around you in your town, in your unit, who also are at least interested in money, maybe not passionate about it yet, but if you can, that's cool. But then you start talking about it and bouncing ideas off each other and being accountable to each other, whether you're trying to get out of debt or trying to spend less or trying to invest more. There's people around you that have similar goals, and we hope that things can help link you up with them.
It's funny, I originally started the podcast to promote the book, right? The Military Money Manual book that I wrote published back in 2021. And since then, like, I feel like the podcast has just taken on such a life of its own and just become this like great project that we've been able to work on together. And so many times people send me questions on Instagram or over email, and I'm like, that sounds familiar. I think we've done a podcast episode about that. And I go back and search, and sure enough, I'm able to find, I'm like, oh yeah, like we did 3 podcast episodes about that very topic. Here you go.
It is funny because sometimes I'll be like, Spencer, I have a great podcast idea. Like, we should talk about the TSP, and he'll send me the link to like episode 2. Like, we did that already. I was like, oh, that's why it's a great idea. But that does happen a lot and I think that's another good thing for us to talk about on this episode of just the breadth of topics that we've covered. There are very few things that we haven't at least mentioned. So if you have money questions, there's probably an episode about it. So you can go into Apple or Spotify or Google even, and you search Military Money Manual and then look for the topic, whatever topic right afterwards, and you're gonna find the episode about it. And if there is something that we're missing, then just reach out to us. Let us know from Instagram or email. But we've covered so many things to help military families that hopefully it's been a good run for us. I think 200 episodes, hundreds of thousands of people, tens of thousands of military families helped each month. And it's pretty cool to be a part of. And it's a community that only people that have been in the military will truly understand how to do it. So you can't have someone that doesn't have a military background or military spouse background talk to the military families with the same jargon and same kind of empathy and understanding that we have, having gone through it as well.
I thought it'd be cool to do like a quick rapid fire things we've changed our mind about. So there's a couple topics that...
You're implying I was wrong about something?
No, I mean, obviously we've gotten every single thing we've ever said on the podcast correct. Fair. But I'm just wondering if there's ever been any evolution in kind of thought processes. So first one is Roth versus traditional. So we usually tell people Roth IRAs, Roth TSP. Is that pretty firm? Have you changed your mind about that at all?
I think I've gotten more firm over the 200 episodes. We did the kind of clickbaity episode more recently of you should always do Roth. And I think that's true for like 99.9% of military families. If you have a high income earner spouse, like a lawyer or doctor or something like that, I think even 2 majors together, because such a small percentage of your military pay is taxed. And if you then both, like say you're both pilots and then you go work for Delta or United together, like you're gonna get crushed on taxes. The one thing I will say that we didn't cover on the traditional versus Roth debate as maybe in good a detail as we could have is if you're our hardcore financial independence and you plan on earning 0 income after early retirement, say at 38 or whatever.
I think the most important thing to be focused on is the marginal tax rate. So currently, at the time of the recording, if you're in the 22%, 24% bracket, I can see the argument being made, okay, you should be doing traditional TSP or traditional IRA contributions. I would love to see the military family that is actually in that bracket. And people might think they are, but once you start adding in all the deductions, all the credits, all the untaxed income that you get, the easiest way to do is look at last year's tax return that you filed and see what your effective tax rate was, which I know is marginal, but I guarantee, or just look at your AGI, your adjusted gross income, and see what marginal bracket it puts you in. You're probably very low, even with that dual military major. Now, dual military 05, okay, we can go check, but even that's probably gonna be pretty close.
Yeah, it's hard to make any kind of one size fits all thing in general, But what we're trying to target, I think, in my opinion at least, trying to target the people who are just afraid to get started because they're afraid of making the wrong choice. Yeah. So by giving kind of an overarching, like this is right 99% of the time, it gets the people who need that push or the nudge to get started, a help in picking what's best for their family. We're not going to get, every optimizer is not going to fit in that advice. If you have multiple spreadsheets of like why you pick traditional, like great, stay with traditional. But if you don't know what to do, that's kind of like, you should probably start with Roth until you figure out more details or become a higher income earner or whatever. I would say I've hardened on that one more.
Definitely solidified my opinion that I can tell, if you gave me 100 military service members, I would tell every single one of them to do Roth IRA and Roth TSP. And we had that episode, it's okay to rent in the military, or don't buy a house while you're on active duty.
I think it was never buy a house.
Never buy a house. Oh
yeah,
man, that was
another clickbait one.
Very clickbaity.
It worked. It got some people fired up.
So I've actually softened on this one in regards to when people contact me and they say, I know that you're the anti-real estate guy, but here's my plan, here's the numbers. I always like turn that, I'm like, you're fine. You're gonna do fine. Like, you're running this like a business. You're treating this like a business. You're not just throwing darts at a board and trying to figure this out. Like, you've run the numbers, you've figured this out. You know, you're gonna use the VA loan, or you're gonna use whatever, financing you need to make this work. You're not the person I'm talking to. Yeah. When I say don't buy a house on active duty, I'm talking to the 95% of military families who think that that's the logical next step and their financial independence, or just their journey in adulthood, is to buy a house. And I'm going to tell you that because you're in the military, you're on a different path. You're not walking the American dream path that you've been sold by the real estate industry, and you're probably just gonna need to hold off on buying a house for a couple of years until you've got your living situation a little bit more solidified. I mean, the fact that you can get orders at any time to deploy or to PCS, it completely changes the calculus unless you are aware of that and prepared to be a long distance landlord, which a lot of people are. And so I both softened and hardened. I'm gonna take the middle ground there.
That was gonna be my answer. Okay, I will say that I've gotten kind of similar to the last answer, is we're talking to the average military family, but no one thinks that they're average. They all think they're smarter than the average investor. Yeah. And I think that's the trap that military people have to watch out for, is that you don't know, you don't have control of all the variables. So you don't know what's gonna come your way. And you might think that house in Hawaii is a great investment deal, but we see it all the time from either messages or Reddit posts about people that thought they had a great plan and the plan fell apart, or the math worked when both spouses were bringing in income and then one spouse decides to stay at home with the kids, or one spouse loses the job, or something like that. Or you get like medical retirement and it's not gonna be enough to cover medical separation. Like, there's so many variables out there. So I will say, like, I've softened in a way, because in the right situation, when people have a plan or like a higher net worth, I think it is reasonable. And like, we bought a house this spring at our new duty station, but our plan was, if the monthly payments become too much for our budget, then we pay it off. And I think that's when you have a net worth where you can pay for the house if all else fails and you're not gonna be homeless, that's one thing. But if it's you have no option and it's hard to find a spot, and I don't want to drive an hour from base, so I'm going to take a big risk with my money, but I don't know how long I'm staying in, and my spouse doesn't have a job in the new area. Like, that's where you get yourself into real financial trouble that I hope it doesn't happen, but you might look back in a few years and be like, man, that path to bankruptcy was based on this one decision of buying a house. That foreclosure and short sale happens to more military families than we want to admit, because they took the path of least resistance, or the easy button, because renting or owning is not easy. Taking out a mortgage isn't easy, but it's just maybe the default American dream stereotype that they think they have to do. I've just hardened on it because of all those stories of people that got orders when they weren't expecting it, or people that thought their math was going to work and then it just didn't. Yep. But if you have the net worth to back it up, then it's fine. So I've softened in some ways, but I think hardened overall.
Military credit cards. The rules have changed a bit. Amex, it sounds like maybe you can have less charge cards than you used to be able to have before. Annual fees have increased, but it doesn't really matter for military service members and their dependents.
I think I've hardened in the stance that unless you have a very good reason, like you succumb to credit card debt or you don't trust yourself with credit cards yet, it's silly for military families to not at least have two. Yeah. two, like ideally
Sapphire Reserve,
two,
Amex Platinum.
Chase Sapphire Reserve and Amex Platinum. Ideally 4, where each spouse has that if you're married. But like at least one of each of those just seems like a no-brainer for most families. Again, if you can't meet the spending requirement for the welcome offer through natural spending, like if you can't spend $8,000 in 6 months or whatever the current offer is on some of the cards, then don't do it yet. But I think I've hardened a little bit on like military families should be looking at this, because if at a minimum, if you use nothing else, like you can still get free $75 of Lululemon in every quarter and $300 of travel credit on your Chase Sapphire Reserve every year. So there's just some easy wins. I've softened on the fact that like not everyone wants to maximize it and make it perfect and perfectly optimized, but there's some just easy wins I think everyone probably should look at seriously.
I mean, I would say if you're like a military spouse and you've just PCS'd and you don't have a job at your new duty station and you're like, what can I do to make money or improve my lifestyle? And the first thing that comes up is some like multi-level marketing scheme. Please don't go do that. Just open up a credit card and start utilizing the benefits on there. But I think before you open up the credit card, you have to learn about how to use a credit card correctly and how to get your annual fees waived. You know, there's a lot of studying to do and to like kind of like figure out the whole system. And it's one of those things where
And not overdoing it.
yeah, you don't want to overdo it, but it's one of those things where like it sounds too good to be true, and sometimes you have to like know someone who's already done it and they can kind of like walk you through it. And that's, you know, that's what we're trying to be. We're trying to be that person on this podcast.
Yeah.
But sometimes it helps if there's someone in your life who's taken a similar path.
Yeah, one thing I've hardened on this is the dress code in lounges. I think Spencer softened on lounge benefits. I think he doesn't like them as much, but I think if you're gonna go, you gotta not wear your camo backpack and jeans and a wife beater. And one of our good friends asked if we were drinking last time I gave that rant, and I'm completely sober, but I still stand by it.
Still standing by.
Is you don't, if you walk in there and you can pick which 30 people in the lounge are military, like we're doing it wrong. So hardened on that piece. You didn't ask, but that's a freebie.
Okay, the next one is TSP loan. This is an interesting one. I don't think we've ever talked about the TSP loan on the podcast.
I think it's been, like we've mentioned it, but definitely not an episode about it.
Yeah, and I think it does deserve its own episode because we do get a question quite a bit. And like, I didn't think anybody was doing this, but at least anecdotally on Reddit, I see it probably once a month, once a week, where someone is like borrowing from their TSP.
Yeah, I see it in Facebook groups too, where people ask about it. So it's hard to say whether I've hardened or softened on it. So I'll just say that I think in 99.9% of times, taking a loan from your future self is a bad idea. If you're trying to avoid bankruptcy or something like that, that might be a different conversation. And hopefully you can get the resources you need and the help you need and the information you need where that's not your situation. But just taking it out to get like a down payment for your house or to like even to consolidate credit card debt or something like that is not something I would recommend for almost anyone.
And I've softened on this one. The optimizer in me is like, no, absolutely not, 100% no. But let's say that you're drowning in credit card debt, you come up with a plan, and you're gonna pay off $20,000 of credit card debt in the next year, right? $2,000 a month for the next 10 months. Okay. And in the meantime, rather than paying 25% or 28%, whatever your credit card debt is, you take out the TSP loan, you pay off the credit cards, and then you pay back the TSP loan over the next 10 months. You like pay yourself an interest rate, which I know is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you lose out on, let's say the market's like has a banger year, it's up 30%.
18% year to date, like this year.
Yeah. Yes, did you miss out on those gains? You did. But was it more important to get out of credit card debt? Maybe, you can make that argument. And so for other people who maybe they're waiting on the sale of a house to free up some capital, but they wanna buy another house and they have a good plan, and they're only gonna, float the loan for a couple months, I can see it. I have softened on it. It's not something I'm gonna recommend. I'm going to point people to almost every other resource before that. Like I don't even want people to consider a TSP loan as an option. I would say that I have seen more scenarios now where it's like, and I guess that gets back to like the core of like personal finance is personal. Like we like to say like you're not as unique as you think you are, but everybody's situation is actually unique. And Morgan Housel likes to say in his new book, The Art of Spending Money, everything makes sense with enough information. And in some scenarios, some situations, I could see maybe not encouraging a TSP loan, but it being the least bad option.
I could see that. I think what we more anecdotally hear is people that think that this is going to solve all their problems. And it's not going to fix your behavior. It's not going to fix your overspending. It's not going to fix your poor communication with your spouse about money or hiding transactions from Amazon or Target from each other. And I think that's again, anecdotally, but that's the type of conversation where it comes up more, is that that's the situation where people are looking for a TSP loan just to get their head above water again. And as long as you understand it's not going to fix that, and then you're like, the money's going to come due, like it's still a bill. Yeah. The bill's not going to go away. So unless you fix your behavior and stop overspending or like whatever is going on, and I get it. Again, here's something I will say I've softened on, that I think that a younger version of Jamie thought that there was more like a right path in personal finance. And I still think maybe that's true, but if people don't have an option, like there is a path. Like pick a plan and stick with it, and you'll be better than 99% of families. We're using a lot of 99% in this episode, I think, but it's probably for a reason. But I think people who are smart enough and have researched enough and have the time and the skills to develop the communication with their spouse and like pick a method, whatever method they pick is probably okay. But if you have no idea what to do, then like just pick this one, that either like something from your book or something from Dave Ramsey. Like anything will work if you put your mind to it, if it's a solid like logical plan. I think that understanding that some people come to a different conclusion is okay. I also see a lot of people that think they're smarter than the stock market or think they're smarter than the average returns, and they're not. So it kind of pains me to say that as well, but that's something I've softened on, I think.
I just had someone message me on Instagram today, and they were asking about an equal weighted stock market index fund. So like an S&P 500, where instead of it's market cap weighted, where you own more of Microsoft and Nvidia than you do Domino's Pizza, which, funny enough, I found out today Domino's Pizza is a publicly traded stock, publicly traded company. And it just doesn't, it just like, that was kind of the example I used. I was like, why would you own the same amount of stock of a pizza chain as you would a tech company that did $240 billion of revenue last year, and on that made $80 billion of profit? Right?
And they're supplying the software that Domino's is using to deliver your pizza.
Exactly. At no marginal cost, right? Like it doesn't cost anything to produce another piece of software. So that's just an example of someone who they're trying to find the edge. And it's like, look, like you can spend your whole life trying to find the edge, trying to find the alpha and outperformance, or you can just accept the market returns, buy a low cost index fund and go about your life and focus on the other things like health, fitness, relationships, like the things that really bring you joy, and your money is just there to support doing those things.
Spencer, what about the assumption of like money is one of the most powerful tools out there? I think we've made statements similar to that in the past. How has your impact or your outlook on like money versus wealth versus time freedom, like how has that evolved over the last couple of years?
I've hardened on the idea that the only problems that money solves are money problems. So like if you have student loans, if you have credit card debt, if you are living paycheck to paycheck, earning more money with a good plan, or saving and investing and journeying towards financial independence, or even achieving financial independence, it'll solve that money problem, but it's not going to solve all the other problems. And I like the financial independence movement. I like having a high savings rate because I think once you've set up those systems and you've automated your savings and investing, it frees you up to go work on the other things, because they do take work. Relationships take work. Getting to the gym takes work. Learning about what a healthy diet is. Like if you just ate the standard American diet, it's no surprise that you're going to be extremely unhealthy very early in life and have diseases and complications.
And be uncomfortable and unhappy.
Yeah, as a young person, that is just a matter, it's because you're eating too much bread and you've never seen a vegetable that wasn't deep fried.
Well, we just took a break for dinner and I may have had a couple extra rolls or baguettes, if you will. So yes. I'm offended by that, but
I wasn't calling you out.
No, you're not wrong. I think that that's something that I've hardened on, is that how important it is to have a well-rounded life and not like be all in on the money spreadsheet or all in on the fitness thing or all in on like the dating scene or whatever. You really have to kind of be a jack of all trades, master of none kind of, as you balance. You can't be the best in the world or perfect at everything. It's not possible. And you might be the best in the world at like one thing, like Michael Phelps, best in the world at swimming for a few years. Was he the best dad in the world? Was he the best husband in the world? Was he the best like stock market analyst in the world? Like, I don't know, but I'm guessing probably not. He was really good at one thing I'm not the best in the world at anything. So like you got to be well-rounded. And I think that sometimes, especially when we're in like such a niche topic, like military personal finance, it makes it seem like that's all we care about. But there's a lot more to it, like going on vacation with your friends and things like that.
Oh yeah, I would say 90% of my conversations, and I mean, for a while there, I was not reading any new money books. Like,
how long did that last?
I break it occasionally, but I'm definitely doing better than I like. It used to be like every other book I was reading was like a money or investing book. I've kind of decided like, no, I've got that part solved to the point where I don't need to focus on that, right? I can focus on other things and read about other things. Okay. Military families, should they be pursuing FIRE, so financial independence, and retire early, or should they just be pursuing financial independence, or should they be pursuing Coast-FIRE, or what? How has your thinking evolved on that?
I think we've had the right outset in our recorded intro that we've had for, 2 or 3 years now, if not for 4 years, about financial freedom being, I think it says the ultimate goal.
Ultimate financial goal.
Okay, so that's a good clarifier. But I think financial freedom is a target that every military family should want to be able to achieve, whatever that looks like for you. It might mean being Coast-FI so you can spend more on vacations and not having to invest as much, or you knock your investments down to 5% to keep the match, but you're not doing 25% or 20% anymore. It might mean that one of your spouse, like one of the partners, starts working part-time or not working at all. But the fact that money giving you options is a goal that everyone should want. And I would like to use this platform and my talk with friends to help communicate like how powerful that is to be able to have that option versus just assuming that like the way that you saw life happen, the way that you grew up, the way that your family of origin story is or whatever, that's like the way it has to be. Because you could be done working full time at 38 if you wanted to after a military career, or at 42, or at 45, or at 55, or at 65, like whatever it is. But I don't want you to feel like you have to work until you're 70 or you die in the office chair because you have no other option.
It's kind of like Olympic athletes. I'm never going to be an Olympic athlete, but I can train similarly to an Olympic athlete, right? I can do the similar movements. I can eat a good diet. I can do the things that an athlete does, right? And so when you see these people who are like, I retired at 28, I retired at 38, like that doesn't have to be you, right? Those are kind of the Olympic athletes of the personal finance or FIRE movement space. You can learn from them and you can, take the things that are valuable, like, okay, I'm gonna have a high savings rate because that gives me options and that gives me freedom. But you know what? I don't wanna live in an RV. So I'm not going to.
I don't wanna have to move to Cambodia.
Yeah, exactly.
Live off $18,000 a year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it just shows that there are different lifestyles and that there's just a world of possibility out there. And so many military service members have blinders on and they're just not aware that there are so many possibilities out there. And I think by presenting kind of the FI or the FIRE movement ideals, it just kind of demonstrates like you could be, especially on the officer side, but also we get stories on the enlisted side as well. Like you could do a 20-year career, have a paid off house, have millions of dollars in a brokerage account, and be collecting a military pension. And you could be done working, or you could go work on whatever else you wanted to, whether it's a startup or go be a missionary and work for nothing, but be self-sufficient. You could travel, you could live your life, and it just gives you options. And I think that so many people don't feel like they have options, and I hope that's the message that we're getting across to people, that money can give you options. Okay, how much emergency fund is truly needed? I think we did mention emergency funds earlier in the episode, but I think I'm gonna split the difference here. I've doubled down on the fact that everybody needs an emergency fund. I've become much less like the rules of like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, $10,000, $1,000. I don't care. Like everybody, I think, needs a little bit of savings set aside. I think it's usually higher than a young person estimates, and it's probably lower than like an older person estimates with a family. But I have doubled down the fact that every military family, every military service member needs an emergency fund. I don't care what the number is anymore. You figure it out, what's comfortable for you. I'll give you a guideline if you need to.
That's fair. I think I've been consistent on this. No change for me. Like you need an initial one. Yep. And if you want to do 1,000, that's fine. And if you want to inflation adjust it or look at the statistics and pick like the How to Money guys do like $25,472 or something very specific. Yeah. Because that's what some study said that you would need. Yeah. then that's fine too. But being intentional about it is like hard. I'm hard on that. You have to make a decision, talk about it with your spouse. What do you feel comfortable with about? And the dollar amount is less important than the feeling of security that you each will have when you have something set aside. And then things will not become an emergency anymore because you have money set aside.
Okay, we got two more here, Jamie. Back to financial independence, financial freedom. What do you think of the 4% rule, 25x? So you can turn around. The 4% rule basically says you can pull 4% off of a standard 60-40, 80-20 stock bond portfolio. And so if you have $1 million, you can pull $40,000 a year, inflation adjusted, for the rest of your life, or at least a 30-year time period. There's longer studies out there now, and there's websites you can run calculators. But you can flip that around, right? And if your expenses are $40,000 a year, you just multiply it times 25, and that gets to $1 million. And so then your FI, your financial independence number, becomes $1 million. So what do you think? 4% rule still works? Do you go more conservative? 3% rule, 5% rule? I mean, we've been studying this now for, gosh, I probably first learned about the 4% rule 13 years ago. What are your thoughts?
I think the 4% rule is the minimum. I definitely would not go more quote unquote conservative to a 3 or 3.5%. And the Bill Bangan, the founder of that, or one of the authors of the study, has been doing a lot of podcasts recently. He may have even have a new book coming out or something. I don't know exactly why he's on the podcast tour right now. He says most people should be comfortable at like a 4.5%, and some people higher. You got to make a number that makes sense to you, but if you pick a number that's too low, like if I feel more conservative, so I want to do 3% because I want to just make sure I'm good, then you run the risk of like working too hard or forgetting to live life because you're so focused on saving up extra. I would say like 4.5% in my mind is kind of the minimum. If you want to make it 5 or slightly above 5, then there's a strong case for that too. But I think it's powerful when people understand that like 5% is possible in a lot of scenarios. And if you look at the original study, at least, it was a 60-40 split, which we personally, I think both of us will say publicly, we're a more aggressive portfolio than that. And it also was a 30-year time horizon where in only one case did they get down to $0.
That's why it was 4%. And correct. It wasn't even 4%. It was like 4.05 or 4.15.
Yeah.
It was slightly above 4%.
Slightly above. There was no scenario where
you had to go below 4%.
You had to go below. And like in my case with a more aggressive portfolio, I think that even considering the sequence of return risk and all these other things, like I think we are okay of acknowledging that 4%, maybe 4.5% is kind of the baseline now, and a little bit higher than that is probably acceptable. I've loosened on the fact that 4% is the rule, and I've hardened on the fact that there should be some guideline that you're achieving, but it's nice to know that you could be financially independent with 20x your annual expenses instead of 25x, and that might help a lot of military families make it seem more realistic or get there quicker when they are able to adjust their goal.
Yeah, and having that 20x, maybe the 20x is when you get to 20x at a military retirement age and you don't touch your assets initially, right? And you let them build, and then you start touching them in a couple of years when they reach 25x, but that just gives you that freedom. And you say, well, okay, maybe we'll cut our expenses for a couple of years, we'll go travel, or we'll do a lower cost lifestyle, but in a couple of years, we can ramp our lifestyle back up.
Yeah, I think that's the key for me in my mind is if I stop working full time at say 42 or 45, I want to be aggressive in that approach in a way because I can always go back and make more money. Like I don't want to be like, ooh, I'm not sure it's going to work and I end up working till 60 just to make sure, like just to pad the stats. I'd rather stop working at 45, and then if the math doesn't work out, either I stop taking vacations for a couple years. If that doesn't work, I cancel Amazon Prime for a couple years. I cancel Netflix and cut all these costs. And if that doesn't work, then I pick up a part-time job. And if that doesn't work, then I go be a government contractor. And I can go, whatever the modern day equivalent of going to Afghanistan for a year is and come back with $300,000 and be okay. Like something like that there's options out there. And I think I would say I've softened on the fact that it has to be black and white.
For me, the 4% rule it used to be kind of aspirational, where I thought, okay, maybe it'd be safer being a 3.5% or a 3% rule, which means at that point, you're getting 33 times your annual expenses saved and invested. But having seen people who actually retire young or stop working, a lot of times they go on and they make more money because, like a 40-year retirement, quote unquote, is a long period of time.
Yep.
Nobody ever factors in Social Security. For military families, you have a military pension. So you have an inflation-adjusted, guaranteed source of income. Almost nobody ever factors in VA disability, and many people who leave the military are eligible for some kind of VA disability compensation. I've definitely set 4% as kind of the hard floor now. And now I think 5% is maybe a bit aggressive, but again, to me, it's all about just adjusting the plan as you go along and reassessing. If you retire and the stock market crashes 50% and it stays down for a couple of years, maybe you should readjust your retirement plan. But if you retired in, let's say, 2020 even, and you've now had, I think the stock market has doubled in the last 5 years since 2020. Maybe you should reassess your plan and maybe you should pull a little bit more out. Maybe the 4% rule is a bit conservative. So I think the biggest thing is just be flexible and have a plan, but also like in the military, no plan survives first contact with the enemy and no retirement survives first contact with reality. So I would say that for me, especially though, I see so many retirees who don't even get close to 4%. They only live off their income because they're afraid to touch their principal. And I think that you're living a life smaller than you need to. And there's no prize when you get to heaven. And St. Peter's like, good job, you died with a higher net worth than you would have if you hadn't, why didn't you throw a 50th birthday party for yourself and invite your whole family to a big resort and buy out the whole resort? Oh, well, that would cost $100,000. Okay, so what? You can't take it with you. And I think that's, Die With Zero really drove that home as well, where you really want to time bucket your life and make sure that you're having the experiences and making the memories in the age brackets where it makes the most sense. So if you have young kids, make sure that you're making memories with them. Make sure that if taking your young kids to Disney World is important, that you do it. All right, last one, crypto and other alternative investments. We're laughing. I have doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on this. I hate crypto as a quote unquote asset class. I see no asset there. It doesn't cash flow. It's worse than gold. I'm gonna keep saying this even when Bitcoin hits $1 million US to a single Bitcoin. I don't care. It's a Ponzi scheme. Stay away from crypto. And I will probably go to my grave saying that. And one day when the US dollar collapses and we all switch to using Bitcoin, that's fine. I'll turn in my US dollars and I'll get my Bitcoins.
So I'm a little less passionate. I have very, very little of any Bitcoin or other coins. But I don't care if people want to do some play money with it, like 1% of your net worth or $5,000 or $10,000, depending on your net worth. I think it's reasonable if you want to go have some fun money, kind of like I have my Nancy Pelosi stock track with a very small percentage, not even 1% of my net worth in there. And it's up 31% year to date. So if you want to go play with Bitcoin, with a small percentage, I don't care, but it's not going to overall change anything.
Yeah, to me, it's a gambling thing. When I go to the casino, I don't add the roulette table to my asset allocation. So if you're adding crypto to your, I have a 5%, allocation to crypto. Okay, that's fine. I would not recommend that. I would have a 0% allocation, meaning that, yeah, you can have some fun money, you can have some play money, but I would not be relying on crypto for your retirement.
Well, it's a lot to look back on over 4 years, almost 4.5 years now since our first.
When did we start? May 2021?
It's been a good run. Thanks for taking the journey back with us and reflecting on some of the topics. And like we mentioned earlier, if there's something we haven't hit yet and you want an entire episode dedicated to, keep sending in the questions on Instagram at Military Money Manual or via email podcast@militarymoneymanual.com. And that's really the part of this journey that makes it fun, is getting to help individual military families. And when we talk to them and help them with their specific question, their specific situation, instead of just generic podcasting, pontificating into the microphone, that's what makes it really fun. So we appreciate all the listeners. I mean, some of you have been with us from the get-go, and we don't take that lightly. So we just want to say thank you for that. And if you're new here, don't go back and listen to all of them. Don't do it. Find the topic you want and then go dig into that topic.
Somebody that messaged me the other day and they're like, I like to listen to podcasts from the very beginning in order. And that's great. Thank you. I appreciate you. But just read the headlines, read the titles, read the show notes, see if it's interesting, the topic's interesting to you, and then listen to it. Unless you've got the longest road trip ever, or you're deployed and you're just sitting in a fob and...
Still sounds terrible.
Yeah, it still sounds awful. But again, like Jamie, I'm just gonna echo you, Jamie. For those of you who've been listening from the beginning, or if this is even your first episode, thank you so much. It is pretty incredible that we get to reach over 10,000 people every month And I just hope it's been useful and helpful to at least one person. And I think based on the emails and the Instagram we get, it has been helpful to at least one person. So that's been really cool.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.